Living in America as a black man has never been easy. And I think it's important, considering the times that we're living in now, to be intentional with raising the conversation around the black experiences, specifically for a male. And that is why I thought it was important for us in San Antonio to identify men from varied backgrounds to share their story.
If it reaches one person, if it reaches one heart, it changes one mind or makes one person empathetic, the goal of this project, in my opinion, is reached, because that's what we want to do, one person at a time.
Please. Please, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Please, man.
Get up, get in the car.
Mama.
Get up and get in the car right.
I can't.
Get.
Stomach hurts.
When I saw Mr. Floyd's video, it just brought out a feeling of just an enraged feeling, because it's right there on camera. You have a man that is roughly around my age, my size, my build, on the floor face down with the officer's knee lodged on his neck, and he's screaming and crying out the same things that I would scream and cry out if I was in his position. I could hear my voice, in the video. It was that close.
I just think about how crazy it is. Like George Floyd, he kept screaming that he couldn't breathe. And I'm like, if he says he can't breathe, then do something else to detain him, instead of just putting your knee on his, holding him down the way the cop was.
It's not happening more, it's just being filmed.
I think my mom at a very early age instilled in me, she would lecture on and on and on out. She's probably told me millions of times, how to treat cops, how to react when so-and-so happens. So you can only prepare so much, and sometimes even with all the preparation, it doesn't help.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Bah. Paul Laurence Dunbar, 1900.
My dad, he was pulled over just like a week ago. I felt that it was weird because I'm usually not present if someone pulls him over, but he taught me to always have your license registration, your license, your ID, everything right here. Like, make sure that you're recording and have your other hand on the steering wheel where they can see them. So for that, he didn't even tell me, but I started to record on my iPad while he was talking to the police. A white person wouldn't have to even apologize or tell the person that they're not pulling a gun.
The most egregious stop I ever had was my wife and I were stopped at a stop sign going to Austin, and the policeman said, "You were going 70 miles an hour." Wait a minute. I mean, for me to go 70 miles an hour and for you to catch me at the stop sign, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I looked at the policeman after he handed me the ticket, and I said, "Sir, you won't find a more respectful person than me." I said, "But you know, and I know, that I wasn't going 70 miles an hour." And he never said a word. He just handed me the ticket, of course, and he walked off.
I had my everything on, my ribbons, my tie, my accoutrements. I'm coming out of Texas A&M University. He pulls me over, doesn't tell me why he pulled me over, asked me if I was in the military, and then he let me go. And then I'm coming from church with my family. State trooper pulls me over, asked him why he was pulling me over. He said, well, you were weaving. And I don't drink, I don't smoke, I never have. I'm more into health and fitness. It's coming from church. And it was strange because every time I got stopped by the police, I'm being totally honest with you, I had to show my military ID first.
The prejudice against the Negro reverses the precedents of law, and everyone accused is looked on as guilty until he is proven innocent. Paul Laurence Dunbar, 1900.
You don't have to be told that somebody don't like you or somebody will treat you different. You know, you just got to, you just know.
My dad is 43 years old, so he's pretty old. He teaches me that not everyone is the same, but that's okay. That me and my sister are different from a lot of people, but that shouldn't really affect us. It could affect them, but that's not our problem. What they think about us, because we shouldn't care. We should do our own thing and not be scared of what they might say, what they might do, because you're not living a good life if what other people say affects how you act and how you feel.
First and foremost is respect. We give it and we demand it. I tell my son to treat everybody with respect.
Worst thing I've ever heard was that you're shit-skinned. Because you have shit skin, you know what, there's nothing else to say. Like, my argument is you have shit skin. Having to articulate and not want to fight or be upset or be mad, but have to go home and tell your kids. But still pay the mortgage, pay the bills, be the man that you need to be.
I am the mother of sorrows. I am the ender of grief. Paul Laurence Dunbar, 1896.
My earliest, I guess, moment that it was really thrown in my face that I was different was being in kindergarten. I was sitting down, and as a child I used to always love watching my mom put on her makeup. That was one of the things I loved to do in the morning. And so we were sitting in class, and I decided I'm gonna put red markers on my lips because the person who means the most to me in my life, which is my mom, she does that every morning, right? Of course it was lipstick, but you know, the mind of a child. So as I'm putting the red lipstick on, I can remember my teacher taking and snatching the marker out of my hand and quickly saying, you know, boys do not wear color on their faces. And the whole class laughing at me. I didn't know it was wrong because at home, I was allowed to do that.
She gave me a rose, and I kissed it and pressed it. Ah, how my heart glows. Could I ever have guessed it? Paul Laurence Dunbar, 1899.
Even though as a gay person, I'm supposed to be a part of this large family of LGBTQ persons, I'm still Black. I still have to go into that knowing that as gay as we all are, that they still have those preconceived notions of Black people, whether they're gay or straight. They have those prejudices about or against us. So dealing with that, you know, is difficult. I often find in arguments I tell people I'm Black first and then I'm gay, if that makes sense.
I went to TMI here in San Antonio, and definitely my family couldn't afford it. I got a grant there, and that was really like, you know, a socioeconomic shock. just tax bracket that I can identify with. I did learn a lot about the nicer things in life. And so, and just being a natural 14-year-old at the time, 15-year-old, and my peers had nicer homes and lake houses, and and I was a friendly kid. So yeah, I was often invited on lots of stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
I played a string instrument, and I was also an athlete in high school. In grade school. And so I feel like I was always in this mix of trying to push back against the stereotype that I feel like black men specifically were always boxed in. Of like, okay, they're either just an athlete and they're a really good athlete and they're not good at school, or they just stick to their own friend groups and they only listen to hip hop music, or there's these stereotypes that I feel like are only tied to black people, black men in particular. And in my mind, I was like, well, I like those things, but I don't have to be defined by what other people think of me.
Person coming in not knowing that I was black, my receptionist was white. We had been together at Fort Hood, and she was a registered nurse, and was from San Antonio. We both were getting out of the Army at the same time. So she came up to me one day and said, Harmon, I'd like to work for you. I said, well, I'm just going in practice. I can't afford to pay an RN. She said, just pay me what you can. So I was probably one of the few doctors in San Antonio with an registered nurse as my nurse. But that's how that transpired. So they would come in and they would see Evelyn, who was white. And so she proceeded to bring them back to the back, and all of a sudden the person would see me. And oftentimes they would say they had forgotten their purse. And they needed to go back to the car to get it, and you'd never see them again. I had this one instance of one of the local physicians, one of the family doctors, had asked me to see one of his patients in an emergency room. It was an older lady, she was probably in the 90s. So I go in and see her, and she's partially demented, but not demented so much that she still wasn't a racist. And she looks at me and starts screaming that the nigger stole her banana. So, you just gotta start laughing.
So old dude's sitting in a recliner, so we walk in, and probably 10th house we'd been in that day. It was after dinner, and he looked at me, and this dude's he's in distress, and he said, son, I'm a Georgia peach. I had no idea what a Georgia peach meant. I didn't know what he was talking about. He said, son, I'm a Georgia peach. He said, where I come from, blacks don't do medicine. And I'm thinking, this dude's had a freaking heart attack. And he doesn't want me to treat him because I'm black. And so my officer, his name is Pete Lynch, and he's deceased now, and best captain I ever worked for. And he said, well, if he's not good enough to take care of you, then neither are we. And he said, if you want me to call another unit to come take care of you, that's what I'll do. And so the guy backed off of it, and I ended up taking care of him, but I thought the audacity that you could potentially be on your deathbed and the black face that walks in here to try to save you, you don't want that help.
There has not been, in the history of this country, risen a single black man whose pretensions have not been sneered at, laughed at, and then lamely wondered at. Paul Laurence Dunbar, 1898.
I felt definitely a lot more awkward and out of place at Alamo Heights because I was one of the few African Americans there. One of the, literally, my brother and I walked to school. We lived right off of Broadway, and so I was walking. I dropped him off at the elementary school, and I went to the middle school, so it wasn't that far of a walk. And literally the first week we were there, my brother and I were walking. Again, my brother's in kindergarten, I'm in 7th grade, and a pickup truck is speeding by up Broadway. And next thing you know, we heard the truck screech, come to a screeching stop. 2 high school kids, jump out of the car and basically said, "Niggers go home." And that's the first, kind of week there. And my brother and I remember we kind of looked at each other and we started laughing.
On the field, we were, teammates. We respected one another, we would talk to one another. But then once we got off the field, it was a whole different ball game in terms of our relationships, expectations of one another, the way we even spoke to one another, and words we used to one another. It was completely different. One thing that stands out to me is we're leaving a game when I was in high school, and it was one of the pitcher was driving, and I was in the back seat, and then they were just throwing around the word nigger like it was nothing. And I never really heard the word. I heard it, but I never really understood it, comprehended it. But I was a child. I heard it in songs, but I just thought it was just a rap lyric. But then when I'm hearing my teammates refer to blacks as niggers, it kind of opened up my eyes. And I couldn't just get out the car and walk away. I couldn't just turn off my ability to hear.
The word nigger to me, like I said, by definition, it means an ignorant person. I don't take it as being a black person. But it also goes with how you say it. So if another race calls me a nigger, I take it personal if they say it with that emotion, that, I guess, hate.
People today still judge people by their color.
I remember this like it was yesterday. Me and my friend had been dropped off to enjoy a middle school track meet at Blossom Athletic Center. As the meet came to a conclusion, my friend got a call from his mother and stated that she was running a bit late. So we were probably 30 to 45 minutes after everyone had left. And it was me, my friend, and a police officer. We were sitting on the curb waiting to get picked up. So as we're sitting there, the sun begins to set, and the officer comes up to us and asks us what we're doing. And I articulated that we were waiting on my friend's mother to pick us up, and she was just a few minutes away. And life really changed in that moment. I didn't expect this response, but he said, "You niggers need to go home." And that was a moment that I realized there was much more to my story that I didn't know about.
Right now, in work and a lot of society right now is going through all these discussions around Black Lives Matter, for example, and the struggle that many white people have about understanding Black Lives Matter and feeling like they can't support that because if they do, then they automatically think that you don't support the police. It's not an either-or kind of thing. I absolutely support the police. I absolutely support the need for security and safety. And I don't view Black Lives Matter as this militant organization. I view it more from the eyes of the parents, the moms, and the husbands worrying about their kids being killed.
I was pretty certain that other mothers didn't have to repeat to their sons, hey, make sure you have a receipt every time you go into the convenience store, if I send you in for an errand, whatever it may be. As much as you think you're prepared, it's more intense than what you're prepared for. And I think every black man can say that. They'll have good guidance between mothers, fathers, uncles, older siblings, and they try to give you certain warnings and certain, you don't have to make a mistake to learn from it. Learn from my mistakes.
I can't trust white people. I can trust every race in the world. I can trust them, but there's some people in every race that you just can't, that you have to be cautious.
I was 11 years old, and I made the all-star team. And typically 11-year-olds don't make an all-star team. So I made the All-Star team, you know, we were celebrating, and then we got a phone call at home where my mom got off the phone, and then she came into my room crying, saying that I just got cut from the All-Star team, that they put somebody else on there. And so that was our first conversation of, I was the only black kid there. And so that was our first conversation about race. I never knew I was mixed, I never really thought about it. I just kind of hung out with people that I thought that were cool. But that was the first time my mother broke down and said, you're black. And so you being black, you're gonna have to deal with certain issues, and this is your first issue, is how to overcome this.
If somebody has a problem with my skin, it's their problem. It's not mine.
Because I grew up in Catholic school, because I had been at Brockport, I never had a sense of being inferior. I never had a sense that that there was anything that would be denied me because of my color, because of my race. I just grew up believing if you worked in the spirit of excellence, if you honored the Lord in your upbringing, that whatever God had for you, you could have.
I guess around 6, my best friend was white, you know, so race was never a problem for me.
I look like, I love who I am. There's no denying that whatsoever. But I think 3 or 4, maybe even 5 steps ahead before everything I do. From the way that I dress, from the car I drive, where I drive, how I interact with people. And I've had the ability I can change my dialect depending on where I am. If I'm on a certain part of town and I'm hanging out with certain types of people, I can talk a certain way. I can go to a boardroom and I can flip the switch and I can enunciate and articulate ideas and overanalyze certain subject matters that I wouldn't do in another crowd.
I think America today is better in 2020 than it was in the 60s. And here's why. You look at the advancements of black people or non-white people in all industries. There is significant progress that's being made. Am I suggesting that we have arrived? Absolutely not. We still have many miles to go. But I will tell you, in this moment in time that we're in, there is still a faction of extremism that exists in America. And I believe that we are in a period of time that this is proverbially the last gasp for the racists. And the ugliest underbelly of America is rearing itself. And I think that there is a real fight for the soul of this country.
It needs to be said that for me to continue to hold these things in without being able to express them is not good. And I wonder how many black men in America feel like I feel and can't even say anything about it. Like, don't say anything about it. I'm sure a lot of things happen mentally to them that they can't even explain because they're not able to express themselves in any way, shape, or form.
I think that we have to have a cultural transformation in order to do that. It has to be heartfelt, a heartfelt cultural transformation. There's got to be, because there's a feeling of systemic racism within the country. And so in order to fix that, you have to have a cultural transformation, in my view.
As a result of the internet and social media, that allows for things to be more visible. And then I think people are more adamant and more intentional about addressing these kind of distinctions and people being treated for reasons that are really are nonsensical. You know, so I don't think things are digressing. I think things are being more honest. And when things are being, and when people, the problem with honesty is that it calls people out. And when people feel called out, they feel threatened.
There's something going on in that process of why there are not more people in leadership positions. And you can't, and unless you're telling me that just white males are so much stronger and better and smarter than everyone else, then that's a different conversation, but no one's been able to convince me of that. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we have to work together. White, Hispanic, Asian, Black, we need to come together and just say this is the right thing to do.
That's probably the biggest thing that I can think of that one person can do for another, is to believe in you. Sometimes when you don't necessarily believe in yourself, that is the most fueling, elevating experience to have, because it helps you to grow and expand opportunities. So plenty of people have done that for me from the time I was, my son's age to today, and I'm, really grateful to everybody who's given me the scores of opportunities to do cool things and be around cool people and be a part of cool projects.